what did this diagnostic report do? Over the last year, during COVID and into the fall, they studied the town and they put together this report. And in the report, they found that people loved the old downtown, but that our current zoning, which is use-based zoning, couldn't even recreate the small town character that people love. There were non-conforming lot sizes. There were setbacks that weren't standard. There were bulk standards. A bulk standard is like how many square feet you can have in a given place and how tall it can be. And I saw some people on this call that are from Keep Golden. That group formed when some kind of monstrous duplexes were built in the north end of town, and they were not compatible with the existing surroundings. While they might have been allowed by zoning, they were not very compatible. The same thing happened in the central neighborhoods area. And so our current zoning kind of became something to restrict people's ability to build, but it didn't do it in a way that preserved our character. This is kind of a wishy-washy government answer, but there's something that we have created called a comprehensive plan. And that was created, all cities have to create this. And this comprehensive plan is supposed to define how you want to grow. Likewise, we have neighborhood plans and we have Vision 2020. And we put a lot of effort into defining how we wanted the city to grow. But what we never did was we never statutorily tied those desires to the zoning code and made them shalls and must do's. And instead they were would be nice if and shoulds. And they were never held up to the scrutiny of law. So what happened was we just had people develop based on what they could maximize their profit for. The biggest thing they could build on a lot. And there was a disconnect between the desires that were laid out pretty well and the statutory requirements. And why was that? I would say a little bit of a weakness on the part of Colorado home rule laws, but that's a little bit of a supposition on my part. I also think that the city should have been stronger in pushing back on development that they didn't like. So that's an opinion, and it's just mine. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
All right. So let's see, how did the city develop? This is as big as I can make it, and I'm sorry for the small size of things, so I'm going to kind of move my mouse around to highlight what this says. This says that from 1850 to 1890s, the core of the downtown was built. And some of those buildings still exist. Oops, other way. And the interesting thing about the new direction of the zoning code is it does give people more rights to do things. And I just said that people did things that were out of character and didn't match the comprehensive plan. That's true of the current code. The proposed code is going to allow people to do things that they want to do, but the character is actually well defined and mapped out so that if they want to do something, they hopefully don't break the character. So I've just been scrolling on my mouse here to show you some of the things that have changed over time. Again, the older neighborhoods, people liked, but we didn't really have any zoning until 1949. There was 5 zone districts. I've got to move my Zoom window around here a little bit. Hang on a sec. Cool. All right. And then there was some minimum lot sizes brought in 1956. I don't want to take too much time on this, but I'll just say that minimum lot sizes, from what I have read nationally, were used as a way to keep lower income people out of suburbia. If you have a minimum lot size, then you obviously need a minimum amount of capital. And that means you need to be able to get a loan. And the FHA would not back loans unless some of them stipulated that they had minimum lot sizes. And that continued into the 70s for sure, where we increased the minimum lot size.
Don, Matt Birdie basically backed that up, saying I'd say size can be tied to bank appraisals and loans.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure why it just jumped that many decades, but nonetheless, let me go through some of the colors here. The 1900s to the 30s, there was a little bit more build out over time. The 40s and 70s, a lot of the neighborhoods that people kind of like, not PUD, not anywhere America. And when I say anywhere America, that's from the diagnostic report, Anywhere USA, where some of the houses, not to cast aspersions, but in Mountain Ridge or Stonebridge and some of the other PUDs could be anywhere in this country, and they just happen to be in Golden. That's not true of the 40s to the 70s, where the South Golden and Beverly Heights and some of those other neighborhoods up behind King Supers were built. But then in the 80s and into the 2010s, a lot of stuff was built that could be anywhere. And more rules got put in place, but they didn't necessarily change it didn't create what we wanted in terms of character. And I think that, I don't want to beat the topic, but that is what's driving this zoning code change. Why are we doing this? Because we lost our character, we can't recreate it, and they're trying to do so. They're trying to say, if you're going to continue to grow and change, then at least do so in character. So I'm just scrolling and you're seeing some of the additions to the code, but none of which really addressed character. And I can tell you, after 8 years on Planning Commission, it was beyond frustrating to have a project come in that was essentially garbage that you didn't want to see in your town, but it met all the code and you could do nothing to shoot it down.
In order to be able to have a full understanding, should there be a well-characterized definition of what that might be?
Well, that's what the diagnostic report does. And I've just skated on the surface, but they essentially tried to figure out what people meant by character. So because it does mean different things to different people. I know for some it means they enjoy their yard and their space and their setbacks, and for others it's a sense of a walkable neighborhood. And those are not necessarily in conjunction.
So is that a fundamental weakness in this because of perceptions?
Yeah, I mean, what it does is it makes it hard to make change, and it's why this is the first comprehensive zoning rewrite in decades. It's otherwise been band-aids, chicken wire, and other stuff to fix the code. I mean, you can look at all these changes. What were they trying to do? They were trying to deal with things that people didn't necessarily like sometimes.
Right.
So. Like maximum height lot coverage, that was to deal with some big bulky properties. The reduced setbacks and lot frontage came out after the North Golden neighborhoods started pushing back on some of the duplexes. The porches were added as like, hey, you know what? A lot of the things we like have porches, so let's demand there be porches.
Don, what the diagnostic report goes into, if folks want to look through it, is they basically divide the city into different neighborhoods based on character and try to get at the elements that distinguish the different neighborhoods. So in that respect, I think the new approach is a plus.
Yeah. Here's an example of when we say we can't recreate the current situation. At the top is you're on Ford Street, and if you were to follow my mouse and turn left, you take a left on 18th, and Safeway would be right over here where these words are. This is 19th here, and here's Ford. So there are currently, there is this apartment, actually it's condos, 12 condos here, And that parking lot was empty from about 1994 until 2017 or so. It used to have the Parfet family home on it before 1994, and it was torn down. But this has been basically a parking lot for decades. And adjacent to it was some single family homes, which are still single family homes, albeit I believe all of them are rentals and most of them to Colorado School of Mine students. If you were to take the current code and try to redevelop any of this, you could not build these houses. They are not allowed in this zoning area, which happens to be called CC1, Commercial Community Mixed Zoning 1. In any case, the point is, if you wanted to redevelop this area, you could only build some big box like this that covered much of the lots and created no feeling of community and would be seriously out of character with the current zoning. I mean, with the current building, not to say zoning. So what the new proposal is, hey, even though this area has commercial uses allowed, let's still make some of these forms allowed as well. Let's allow urban homes or small cottages to still exist in commercial zones because they do exist. And let's not destroy what does exist already. So the new zoning would allow these types, whereas the current zoning does not. And so on Ford Street and Jackson, which are arterials, which is a subtlety that's probably not worth knowing, but it is, there's certain uses that are allowed that are not allowed in other neighborhoods. And so when we go back and look at the map, you'll see, oh, Ford and Jackson, those allow different uses than my neighborhood, even though I'm a block away. Here's another example. What's allowed in the current zoning and not in the proposed code. This is two lots this is a real situation, 5th and Arapahoe, and this is existing at 5th and Arapahoe. Two small houses. They could be combined into one lot, and a big bulky structure could be built there that maybe represents, I think the zoning there is R2 or R3. I don't know if somebody's on the phone call who knows that offhand. In any case, you could put in probably a quadplex of pretty big, imposing duplexes or quadplexes. That would not be allowed in the proposed code because they're going to these form types and saying, you know what, this is the character of Golden. And if you want to rebuild, you can build something like this, but you can't build something like this. But having said that, I need some of the people that are on this call to really dig in. They are proposing, because there are existing urban duplexes in the older neighborhoods, to allow urban duplexes. And urban duplexes have a big footprint. So if you don't like them, weigh in on the code changes.